McQuestion, for over 28 years talking about things that matter with people who care. Production of McQuestion is made possible in part by individual viewers, supporters of the Foundation for Responsible Television, the University of Texas at Dallas, creating the future.
A recent study showed that Americans who sit all day can be more at risk of dying early than smokers. But here's the good news. If you follow what our experts say about exercise, you can live longer, feel better, and, wait for it, spend less time doing it than what you think. Let's meet some people who practice what they preach. And starting here on my left with Bill Bennick. He and his wife Barbara spent 20 years in New York. Sorry about that. The last 27 close to downtown Dallas. Been retired in the last 3 years, which is good. And you guys have raised 9 children and 22 grandchildren. Is that correct?
That keeps us moving in itself.
I can see why you want to ride bikes just to get away, if nothing over the reason. Besides the arts, you're an avid biker, of course, and you enjoy other sports as well. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sitting next to you is Alan Steelman. He's a best-selling author, a former congressman, which is the best kind, if I may say so, Alan.
I've been trying to live that one down, but you got it right.
You
yes.
have. A former White House staffer, interesting as well. A businessman, of course, a board member. Today his passion is fitness and stress reduction with a specialty in yoga. So, Alan, we hadn't seen each other before today in a long, long time. And I have to ask you, given what I just said about your background, how did this transformation come about? Is it because of old age that you've done this, or because of something else?
Well, let's talk about age, because when we ask people how old they are, we all answer with what our chronological age is, and that is actually the least important. And it's an important issue, I think, to underline with people who are in the category of being a senior, because we tend to talk ourselves into being old with the way we talk about ourselves and about ourselves to others. Deepak Chopra wrote a book 20 years ago called Ageless Body, Timeless Mind, and he said that's the least important age. Our 2 more important ages are our biological age, which has a lot to do with what we inherited from our parents and the way we take care of ourselves, and our psychological age, our attitude toward life. So yes, I have a chronological age, as we all do, but that's the least important of all.
Good. I like your attitude about it. That will help right there.
Very good. Yeah. Now, as to how I got to where I am today on this particular topic. So I went through 2 high-stress careers, politics and business, politics being a blood sport, as we're all observing these days. And flying around the world, I had a global job with a global management consulting firm. So I was dealing with jet lag and living off airplane food, and in a high-stress business with high stakes on most of the negotiations we were doing. So I went to college on a baseball scholarship, so I had always stayed physically active. I did not appreciate the importance of being fit of mind in addition to being physically fit. So I would always have good blood pressure and uric acid level and cholesterol, but I was also highly stressed and anxious all the time. And in my family, there was a bipolar or manic depression gene on the male side, and my only brother, committed suicide. By pure luck of the genetic draw, I didn't get that gene. 3 of my dad's 5 brothers had it. So it's a combination of my family situation, and particularly my brother's suicide, the 2 high-stress careers I was involved in, and what I call the black plague of our age, the record casualties occurring from life in the digital age, and our inability to cope with the speed of life today without what I call the false wizards of pills and alcohol and opioids and so forth. Mm-hmm. We lost more in 2018 alone to opioids than the combined wars of Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq.
Wow.
And the airplane crashes that have been in the news in the last 2 weeks, when you combine, now these are all stress-related deaths I'm talking about. Last year alone, 88,000 from alcohol-related deaths, 72,000 from opioids, and 44,000 suicides. You add those up, that's the equivalent of 10 737 crashes per week in America.
Wow.
That's a black plague taking people. It's a more silent death than the hurricanes and the fires and all the things that get all the press coverage, but killing people in record numbers. So Anyway, that was a long answer to your question, but I was in politics once, so I hope you'll forgive me for giving you a long answer.
I will definitely forgive you. And I wish that everybody in politics had as good a thing that they're working on as you do. That's the point. Now, Bill, you biking is your thing.
Yes.
Why biking?
Well, first of all, let me back up and say why any exercise. I've been taking physicals at the Cooper Clinic for the last 25 years, and they've done a lot of these longitudinal studies which all indicate that the key to a really vigorous long life is movement. The president of the Cooper Clinic, who was my doctor, wrote a book titled Move Yourself, your title really for this program. And their conclusion was that if you moved yourself, not only would you live longer, but you'd have a much higher quality of life. And as I started to age, that became an issue. A friend of mine introduced me to biking, a friend from work. And so for about 25 years now, my wife and I have both gotten into biking, and we try to ride our bikes every day. There's a trail, Katy Trail, right near our house.
So you found a place that even downtown Dallas, very
Yes.
close by, that's fairly safe, because a lot of people are going to say, well, how is it you can ride bikes in a metropolitan area, but you've been able to do it without feeling too much stress? You don't need his help from the stress side from the bike.
Biking's a good way to work off stress too.
Yes.
The Dallas government has done a great job on providing bike trails, safe bike trails around the Metroplex. A lot of people may not know that, but there are tens of miles of biking around the Metroplex. From our house in downtown Dallas, you get on the Katy Trail, you can go all the way to Richardson, Plano, through south into town, on the Santa Fe Trail onto the Trinity Riverbed, which is now being extended as a bike trail over to Fort Worth. So there's lots of places to bike that have nothing to do with roads.
Ken Cooper was on this program twice, I think. In 1995 was one. His book called Aerobics, I guess he sort of invented the term.
Yes.
He and I laughed about that at the time, and I told him how I had sort of met some people who sort of got me involved in doing that and reading his book, and so he's really a hero of ours for sure, and he's the one who got you into it then, right?
Well, his clinic, my
clinic.
doctor there was a fellow by the name of Ted Mitchell, who wrote the book Move Yourself.
Okay,
Right.
I didn't know him.
Right.
Good. Well, that is...
Dennis, I think it might, if I might,
Sure.
be a good idea to place movement, which can take many forms, cycling, running, walking, yoga, within a broader context of the 6 pillars of well-being, because when we're talking about mind, body, and spirit health, and those are the keys to it leading a life of balance and equilibrium, sleep is number 1 on the list of the 6 pillars. Sleep deprivation, and we are a sleep-deprived country,
We are.
negates the benefits from all the rest, and they all are important, but we start with sleep. Nutrition. America is second only to Mexico now in obesity. And binge eating.
We did 2 programs on obesity recently, and you're exactly right.
Binge eating is a way of dealing with stress. And then movement, as we were discussing as the primary topic of this program. Social networks. Loneliness is becoming a huge issue.
Well, you don't understand. We've got Facebook, and we've got texting and all this stuff. What's wrong with you, Alan? Don't you understand?
I do have an addiction, I have to say, on digital devices, so I plead guilty to that one. And then, of course, meditation, calming the monkey brain we're all born with. You know, that monkey in our head that never takes a vacation, never goes to sleep, never takes a day off, worries about tomorrow, fears about mistakes we made before. We just can never be here now. And then finally, grounding, getting out in the sunshine and walking around barefoot on the grass and all. So I do think it is important, if we are striving to deal with the stress in our lives, which I think is probably the bigger issue here, it certainly is the biggest killer we're dealing with, we do need to think about the 6 pillars of this, of which movement is certainly a very important one.
All right. We're going to look at a roll-in now from Dr. Teresa Oswald. And Dr. Teresa Oswald I met last December. She was in town with one of our guests who I'm going to introduce after that. And she sort of focuses on the sitting disease, so to speak. And she now practices in Ohio, but she practiced here for a long time. So if you're ready with that roll-in, let's hear what Dr. Oswald has to say.
Our culture has just changed over the last 100 to 50 years on what we do for both our work, our transportation, and also our entertainment. And all of them are involving sitting for most of the day. Just think about the kind of farm-based society of 200 years ago, where everything you did during the day, including getting your food, doing your occupation, required a lot of physical work. Now for most of us, we're sitting. So they've actually termed it the sitting disease. So just sitting for prolonged periods during the day actually increases our risk for heart disease, diabetes, and it increases the lipids in our blood that contribute to both of those other things. It also increases the size of our midsection, which with all those things combined is called metabolic syndrome, which predisposes people to diabetes and heart disease. And it's just how our social and environmental changes have occurred that just create more need for sitting.
There is a new study which you probably saw put out at the American Heart Association conference in Chicago a week or two ago that says only 20% of Americans get enough exercise now. And then also